You're working with a client, they're unhappy about something because you're trying to act like a team, you're trying to work it out. Maybe it's conflicting and their personality is the type that doesn't go well. Whatever. If you want to negotiate, you need to try to understand them. Keep in mind that other person has three different pieces fueling how they feel or why they felt like this was a big enough deal to bring in some conflict. Their self identity, the power that they have, and the emotions that they feel. So we're going to take each one of these in detail. Identity is how do you see yourself? I, for example, see myself as smart and funny, and I guess it's a little bit awkward to try to identify your own self. That's why in the job interview questions, it's always awkward to have someone say, "Tell us your strengths." Ugh. But if you've talked with them, especially if you've talked about hobbies and things you enjoy, you'll start to understand how they see themselves, what sorts of identifiers do they put on themselves, and if you're challenging that, like if they feel like they're smart and you're explaining something in statistics and they're not getting it, they're going to feel like their identity is being challenged. What do? You work hard to say, "You're super smart, you're getting this. This was really hard for me to understand. I took several classes before I started to get this." Help them to save face. "You're not dumb. This is really complicated." Or if they're the type of person that's always really organized and you're looking at their experimental design saying, "Wow, you messed up all over the place. Look at all these missing values." Hold on, they might be losing face. That's going to cause issues. Instead, be like, "Wow, you did a good job of organizing all these. Losing some pieces now and then, that's not surprising because there's so many pieces here to take care of. You did a great job." If you don't understand how people want to be respected and how they view themselves, it's going to fuel some strong emotions, which you can imagine the emotion and identity are closely connected. One of the definitions for conflict that I found for consulting courses is when you feel bad about something, that tells you the conflict is happening. And how do you handle the conflict? That's going to be fueled by the emotion, which starts with feeling bad. That's why conflict is often seen as undesirable, because it's an undesirable emotion fueling you then to be triggered and you stop looking at the goal. And if it's the client that started this because they feel negative emotions, you're going to feel a natural reaction to fuel off that, right? And to like reflect their negative emotions. So here's things you can do. Take a deep breath, smile, force your body language to be relaxed, and your brain will sense that and say, "Oh, we're supposed to be relaxing." It actually works. Take a drink, count to 10, whatever it takes. Usually, time and body language are some of the main key ones here. If you can't get your emotions under control, then power is going to be an issue. It's possible power is closely associated with identity, like I'm the boss and I'm in charge. So when I tell you to get this done, if you're not listening to me, that means I don't have the power, which means I'm not the boss. That attacks my identity. That leads to the strong emotions. And then, of course, those strong emotions can lead to trying to push for your own power again. So here's a bunch of things that can affect how much power you have, how the company is structured, the way society works. Like I know some societies say there should be respect given to people who are older or people who have trained you. If you're working with a relative, you can imagine how that's going to play into part of who has the power dynamic. Who's got the expertise and knowledge, which as a statistician, you're going to have a lot of that expertise and knowledge. What does that mean for the power dynamic? Hopefully the organizational rules have defined some of that. Economic status, ability to be punished. Do they have some leverage over you? Can you walk away, or are they like your boss? And personality. Some people have strong personalities wanting to find and get and have power. And some people really don't feel a desire to have that sort of middle management position. It's really good early on in the consulting to define the roles. Who is in charge? Who is setting the deadlines? Okay, and if they have a job, let them do it. And if someone's job is to make the final decisions, respect that and be okay if someone overrides a decision that you wanted. Like, I think we need to do a KS test for normality, and somebody says, "No, I'm looking at the picture, the assumptions are fine, we don't need to actually test it." Because, let's be honest, the KS test for normality is way oversensitive. It could be just slightly off from normality. You're still going to get good results, and the KS test will be like, "No, this is not normal. Your assumptions are violated." And if the boss says, "No, I don't think we need to do a KS test," let them make those decisions. They're the leader, and you might have strong emotions because you're self-identifying as I'm the statistical expert here, and so I want the power to push for the type of test I think needs to be done. But let's focus on the goal. The goal is to complete this research project. All right, these are decisions that could be made either way. Let's be clear when we write the report. If you're the one in charge, be gentle and respectful. It can be very hard for some people to have someone else calling the shots because they want the power. That's okay. Let me give you a story of someone I knew who really self-identified as the smartest person in the room and wanted the power to do everything because, they were just so smart. And the emotion that they continuously felt was pretty much anger. And at one point, this person said, "Oh, here's a proof that people have believed for, I think it's like an 80-year-old proof, but here's how it's wrong." And people looked and said, "No, no, that's actually not. Right here, you've made an assumption that's different than other assumptions. No, 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 that's not the case. You don't understand what I'm trying to do because you're not smart enough." At one point, this person actually, in anger, threw their calculator down and broke it. Well, what do you expect happened from this? People were like, "I don't like working with that person. I'm going to ask them not to come by my office anymore." One by one, bridges got burnt. And what did they need? Well, they needed to identify as the genius in the room. And like in this particular example, because I needed to work with this person, partly because someone needed to, and just very calmly, I was like, "Wow, that is so impressive. I don't know that I can get into the details right now, but I'll look through it. I'm just super impressed. You're very smart. Now let's look at this project over here. What do we think? And let's try to get some results." I think this particular person was probably the hardest person I've ever had to work with because they just got so mad at everyone else's incompetence. But because I had a goal and because I needed to get through that goal, I just calmly, patiently, "Yes, yes, so smart." And then until we were finally done. Of course, if they wanted to do another project with me, it'd be like, I paid my dues. A couple strategies. We're talking about getting to know them, so it's going to require words, talking with them. What are their interests? What are their needs? When you ask people how did it go in college or school, you'll learn a lot. Like, "I got good grades." Ah, you self-identify as one of the smart ones. Or, "Ah, I just loved it so much, so many friends." Okay, that tells me something. And I mentioned before a bunch of topics like politics, money, sex, religion. They can be really sensitive issues, but try to listen to what that tells you about the person instead of whether you agree or disagree. When there's conflict, you're asking yourself, where do we go from here? What's our path? What do they need? Ask them, what is it that you're hoping for? Can we work together to figure out how we can both get what we want? And avoid allowing their frustrated feelings to reflect or amplify off you. It's not about keeping score. Don't focus on, "Well, you last time." Focus on, "Here's what we need to accomplish," which honestly, this right here was the only way I was able to work with the person on the last slide who was just so angry all the time. Is, what's our goal? Let's focus on that. And the fact that you are a deeply flawed person, just we don't need to talk about that. Because in soccer, the goal is to kick the ball, not the other players on the team. And if you're constantly trying to take out the other players on the team, you're not going to be able to make any goals. Focus on the soccer ball. When you're talking about where do we go next, some people want to rehash everything from the past. No, no, not necessarily. You can imagine why in a relationship where, two people are in love or whatever, and there's a fight or conflict, if you start rehashing everything from the past, it's not going to go well. Trust me. So get control of your emotions. Don't worry about the fact that the other person is flawed. Let them be what you believe to be a flawed person. What are the goals? Let's talk about ideas of how we can get there. Objectify what you're going after and communicate, and you'll come up with an idea, and you're not going to fix them. That's not the goal. What are our goals for the final project? And if you're feeling conflicted because you're like, "Oh, I still don't know what my final project data is," okay, that might be okay. Now we really need to get moving on that soon. So, discussion question, how hard was it for you to get your data? If you don't have data, then talk about what you've done so far to try to find data. And then within the next like lecture or two, you're going to want to be looking at your data, getting those variables, starting to sort through it, looking at whether you've got missing data. We're going to have a discussion on that coming up. But basically, this discussion question is like, give us an update of how you're doing. You're not going to be in trouble or judged if it's not going well, but hopefully you have some data. And if you do, how tough is it? Especially those of you who got your data from Kaggle, because sometimes Kaggle's really easy to work with and sometimes it's a terrible bear. So let us know how it went.